Buongiorno a tutti, e benvenuti al Padiglione Italia di Expo 2025. Saluto tutti gli illustri ospiti e prego di prendere posto in modo da iniziare questa giornata di lavoro molto importante per la nostra regione, per la regione Puglia. Prego la padrona di casa, il ministro plenipotenziario Elena Sgarbi, di porgere il suo indirizzo di saluto. Ringraziandolo ancora, lo faccio personalmente ma anche a nome del Presidente Emiliano per l'accoglienza, consentitemi il termine anche affettuosa, che ha riservato alla nostra regione, alla nostra comunità imprenditoriale e alle nostre persone, in un segno di amicizia che coglie lo spirito dell'esposizione universale. Consentitemi anche di salutare l'onorevole Ito Shintaro per la sua attenta presenza, con l'auspicio che possa cogliere non soltanto le bellezze della nostra regione, ma le grandi opportunità anche di business e di unione tra i popoli che questa circostanza può favorire. Prego la Ministro Sgarbi di raggiungere il podio per un indirizzo di saluto.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Italy Pavilion. We are most honored to have among us today the Honorable Shintaro Ito. Thank you very much for being here. Is one of the best friends Italy has in this country, and we know we have many, many good friends in Japan. So thank you very much for being here. Welcome again also to the Puglia Region Week. We opened this intense program yesterday, and today we tackle one of the most interesting, in my own opinion, but not just mine, topic for a society that looks forward to the future, the space economy. Actually, Italy has been protagonist in the industrial and technological sector since 1960s, let's say. But what we are witnessing nowadays is a huge growth in the rapid, fast growth of the space economy in many different ways, but mostly related to the growth of the private sector. One thing that is very typical of Italy is the fact that our regions, so beautiful, so diverse, and so dynamic, have for each of them a different setup in their economic development. And Puglia is one of the regions that has a very strong presence in the aerospace sector, but also has a strategy toward a growth of the same sector in the future. We talk about space economy. We talk about the, let's say, the potential for economic growth, social growth, innovation that comes with it. But without a vision, without a strategy, there is no way to growth. But most of all, without partnerships, there is no way to grow. And today we are all here to learn more about the space economy, particularly about spaceports, but we are also here to connect industries, to connect researchers, to connect people in order to develop a better world together. Thank you again very much for being here. Let me say we are honored to have George Neal, the chairman of Global Spaceport Alliance, who will be, let's say, the keynote speaker for the event. Giuseppe Acerno, president and managing director of the Technological Aerospace Cluster. Francesco Paolo Cannito, who is the first counselor at the Embassy of Italy in Tokyo. Naoko Yamazaki, who is the representative director for the Japan Spaceport Association and also a former JAXA astronaut. But most of all, the representative of the Apulia region who are really hosting us today, Alessandro Delle Noci, Regional Minister for Economic Development. I don't want to take any more time to the very interested speakers that will follow on the floor, but again, let me welcome all of you to the Italy Pavilion. Have a nice day together here at the Italy Pavilion. Thanks.
Proseguiamo la parte di indirizzo di saluto con il nostro assessore allo sviluppo economico, che è anche l'ispiratore delle politiche più innovative della nostra regione, oltre ad esserne l'esecutore, e a seguire quindi Alessandro Delle Noci, a seguire il primo consigliere della nostra ambasciata, un altro pugliese, Francesco Paolo Cannito. Grazie.
Buongiorno a tutti, good morning to everyone. Thank you very much to the Ministry for this opportunity, but I want to thank Shintaro Ito for the friendship with the Apulia region, for the collaboration now and in the future. Thank you very much. Grazie. Per noi questa è una giornata importante perché proviamo a capire come costruire delle collaborazioni internazionali strategiche. Siamo in un momento di straordinaria svolta rispetto alle politiche dell'aerospazio pugliese. Per noi l'aerospazio costituisce un settore strategico per l'intera economia e ha conquistato negli ultimi anni una posizione di rilievo nel panorama nazionale e internazionale, facendo crescere il PIL, l'export, gli addetti e le imprese, brevetti, laboratori, investimenti, ricerca e sviluppo. Un giro di affari del comparto aerospaziale pugliese che va a oltre 1,5 miliardi di euro. L'export ha toccato oltre 410 milioni e 7.500 addetti e oltre 5.500 sono i ricercatori attivi nel settore aerospaziale. Il settore conta numerose piccole e medie imprese, start-up, oltre a alcuni player internazionali come il gruppo Angel, General Electric Avio, Leonardo, i quali operano in Puglia con diverse specializzazioni industriali, componendo l'intera filiera aerospaziale, progettazione, costruzione, assemblaggio, collaudo dei motori aeronautici, progettazione e costruzione di aerostrutture e velivoli leggeri in fibra di carbonio, progettazione software, microsatelliti, sistemi di propulsione, sistemi di osservazione della Terra e di gestione dei dati spaziali. E spero che avrete modo di visitare il padiglione e vedere le 7 aziende che sono volute essere qui presenti all'interno di questo straordinario spazio. Il settore aerospaziale in Puglia trae impulso dalla presenza del distretto tecnologico aerospaziale. Ringrazio qui il Presidente Acerno per la presenza e per la grande collaborazione. Un consorzio senza fini di lucro che riunisce i principali attori del settore, dell'università, dei centri di ricerca pubblici e privati in Puglia e contribuisce attivamente alla creazione di un ecosistema a supporto dell'innovazione e competitività delle imprese e start-up locali, anche in campo dell'Advanced Air Mobility, che è proprio il tema di questa settimana. Grazie alla realizzazione di una infrastruttura di ricerca riconosciuta a livello nazionale e che è il Grottaglie Airport Test Bed, specializzata nello sviluppo di tecnologie e sperimentazioni per sistemi aeromobili senza pilota a bordo. Questa infrastruttura è ospitata presso l'aeroporto Taranto-Grottaglie, che è gestito dalla nostra società Aeroporti di Puglia, un aeroporto industriale strategico che gestisce principalmente traffico merci, è attualmente in fase di ampliamento e ammodernamento ed è destinato a diventare il primo spazioporto italiano ed europeo per i voli suborbitali e per rafforzare il ruolo dell'Italia e dell'Europa nella New Space Economy. Nello scorso novembre abbiamo siglato un accordo importante col governo, aggiungo, che sostanzialmente finanzierà la realizzazione della parte aeroportuale legata allo spazio e quindi implementerà la parte industriale con un finanziamento di oltre altri 80 milioni di euro. La Regione Puglia intende cogliere l'opportunità della partecipazione qui a Expo Saca per far conoscere all'ampio pubblico la Puglia, le sue potenzialità nel settore aerospaziale, un vero e proprio polo aerospaziale attorno all'aeroporto di Grottaglie, facendo leva sulla sua disponibilità di un'ampia gamma di incentivi e di sostegno ai sistemi produttivi del territorio regionale gestiti dalla società Puglia Sviluppo SPA, e che già alcune imprese giapponesi, anche qui presenti come NTT Data, hanno avuto modo di conoscere e apprezzare. Il workshop di oggi, con questi illustri ospiti presenti, e consentitemi di ringraziare in particolar modo George Nield per questa opportunità, per la sua presenza in quanto coordinatore della Spaceport Alliance. Ci offre l'opportunità ancora più importante di un confronto internazionale sulle esperienze e gestione degli spazi-porto, sulle opportunità che possono derivare da questi spazi. Poter attivare una relazione, essere in una rete all'interno di una partnership internazionale con i gestori degli spazi-porti più attivi. Solo in Giappone se ne contano oltre 6 e siamo stati qui negli scorsi mesi all'interno di una fiera internazionale Space Tide che ci ha reso parte attiva di questa rete. Assume per noi, per la Puglia, una grande opportunità ed è sicuramente di grande importanza. È prezioso poter apprendere da chi ha già sperimentato in forme diverse la gestione di uno spazioporto e offrire la nostra condivisione ed esperienza maturata in fasi delicate di progetto dell'infrastruttura di Grottaglie. So, Mr. George, we are also here because we want to learn how we can develop the most important spaceport of Europe. Thank you very much.
Buongiorno a tutti. Good morning, everyone. Grazie, first of all, to Elena, our Deputy Commissioner General, for hosting this event dedicated to Puglia, my region, as was mentioned before. And today I'm standing in front of you, well, first of all, as a first counselor at the Embassy of Italy in Tokyo, but as also Pugliese doc, as I will say, truly an Apulian citizen and a proud Apulian citizen. So, well, first of all, thank you again, Alessandro Delinoce, for being here in Japan again. This is not your first time here in this country. Last year we were together. You mentioned Space Tide, which was a very, very good initiative that the Apulia region and together with the embassy, you know, we attended, and it was also good from a global perspective for Puglia to be part of this network, as you mentioned. Thank you also to our friends, Ito-san, grazie mille, il suo italiano migliora sempre ogni giorno che passa e quando ci vediamo, e Naoko-san. Naoko-san was, she's a former Japanese astronaut, and she engaged in this journey with Italy that we are very, very proud of. I'm sorry to say, I'm not bringing today institutional greetings. I want to take this opportunity as an Apulian citizen to speak in front of you, to speak to Alessandro Deli Noci, and he is a very good listener, to give some advice or to give some ideas, to share with you some proposals to make this, let's say, Apulian performance when it comes to space more and more effective. But again, first of all, it's a true honor to join you today for this important seminar. And we are here to speak about space as a real, growing, and strategic sector of our economies, specifically between Italy and Japan, but in this very case, between the Apulia region, Puglia, and Japan. This sector is opening new opportunities in industry, research, education, and international cooperation, and I will get back to it shortly. We are all aware of the transformation underway in the space economy, and what was once the exclusive domain of national agencies is now a truly global and competitive arena. The numbers speak for themselves. The global space economy is projected to exceed 1 trillion euros in the next 2 decades. Spaceports, as we talk today, the gateways to orbit, are emerging as a critical infrastructure for enabling access to this growing market. And this brings me to Italy, and in particular to the region of Puglia, which is going to have an important role in the Italian space economy and hopefully in the global space economy. Puglia, as Alessandro Deli Noci was mentioning, is already well known for its natural beauty, the cultural heritage, but in recent years has been playing a different role, the role of the industrial and technological hub, a region that is positioning itself at the frontier of the aerospace innovation. Let me highlight just 5 reasons, but there are more, of course, why Puglia is at the center, at the forefront of the space economy in Italy. Well, first of all, the geographical position. In the southern part of Europe, with access over to the Mediterranean, it offers ideal conditions for suborbital and equatorial missions. Second, its industrial base. Companies like Alessandro mentioned, like Leonardo, Avio Aereo, working closely with the Italian Space Agency, gives the region strong capabilities in aerostructures, propulsions, and systems integration. And third, again, the Grottaglie Airport, the first Italian and European spaceport, already designed by the Italian Civil Aviation Authority again, a spaceport, is being developed to host horizontal launches and advanced aerospace testing. Fourth, but not less important, academic institutions like the Polytechnic of Bari are investing in aerospace education and research, training the next generation of engineers and innovators and startups. And finally, Puglia has the potential to integrate space infrastructure with other regional strengths, such as logistics, manufacturing, and tourism, creating new synergies across sectors. But to fully realize this vision, Puglia needs to be more and more connected with international partners, to capital, to technology, and to know-how. This is where Italy-Japan cooperation can play a decisive role. Japan, as you know, is a global leader in advanced technologies, in space innovation, in public-private collaborations. Italy and Japan already enjoy a strong bilateral relationship that we called strategic partnership across many sectors, and we believe space can be one of them, one of the next frontiers of our cooperation. And let me go to what I call 5 takeaways and suggestions to our Apulian friends for, let's say, opening up the Apulia-Japan collaborations more and more, what I call practical avenues. Well, first, again, the industrial collaboration. We see great potential for joint ventures between Italian and Japanese companies in areas such as propulsion systems, green aerospace technologies, and spaceplane components. Grottaglie could serve as a test site or operational base for innovative launch vehicles and systems. Second, again, research collaborations. We need to encourage university and research centers in Apulia in Japan to launch joint R&D programs on topics like reusable vehicles, spaceport infrastructure, space debris mitigation, and Japan is very strong in this technology, and advanced materials. This project could be supported by bilateral funding or European and Japanese programs. Third, academic exchanges and talent development. I want to emphasize this point because I always, wherever I see Alessandro Delle Noci, I always emphasize this point about academic collaborations. We need to propose and setting up dual degree programs. We need more and more dual degree programs, and we can do that with Politecnico di Bari, Università del Salento, student exchanges and visiting professorship in aerospace engineering, orbital mechanics, and space law. We need to create shared human capital, which will be key to any long-term cooperation. Fourth, the joint use of infrastructure. Grottaglie could become a base for shared technology demonstration, suborbital flight testing, I was already mentioning, and ground segment operations supporting both the Japanese and European missions. Again, policy alignment, of course, that oversees all these aspects that I was mentioning, together with the regulatory policies. And in this, Italy and Japan could share best practices on safety, environmental standards, licensing procedures, paving the way for a more seamless collaboration in commercial space activities. The last point is about digital and data infrastructure. Alessandro Delle Noci mentioned the presence of NTT data, for example, in Puglia. And we need to establish ground stations and data processing center in Puglia more and more, so we can support satellite constellations, serving not just Europe, but also other geographical areas like North America, the Balkans, the Asia-Pacific market, the Middle East. Japan expertise in data and communications could be essential in this effort. So these are the takeaways that I would like to suggest today. Of course, we are ready to discuss, and the embassy is, of course, the platform that can enable and enhance those discussions. We are the connecting point between, the connecting link between Italy and Japan, together, of course, with the friends of the Commissariato Generale, the Consulate General here in Osaka. But my hope is that we can use today's forum to begin this process of evaluation, assessment, and bringing us together with vision, but also with action. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning again, and first of all, let me say that it's a pleasure to stay here, not only in this place, I would say first in this wonderful country. I had the opportunity to visit it many times, and it's always a pleasure. So just entering in the topic of our meeting, I think I don't need presentation, it's over there. And just to save time, you know that we are in the week of the future of mobility. In these days, Apulia is giving its support to contribute to the debate and to the exchange of ideas and maybe cooperations or collaborations in the next future on this topic. And I think that Regione Puglia gave us the opportunity to support the organization of this free event in a collaboration that goes ahead since many years. And maybe the main goal is, first of all, to let you understand why Apulia region does it. We have 3 events. The first one is Spaceport, which is dedicated to the future of mobility. But we have two other events. Another one is dedicated to the innovative air mobility, advanced air mobility, and we are speaking about something that is facing the future, a new way of transport of people. And then we will have another meeting on the startups dedicated to develop technologies related not only to space but also to aeronautics. So this is the perimeter of our presence, of our support to the Apulia region and of our discussion. And in Apulia region happened something as what has happened in the world in the last 15 years. Maybe no other sectors apart from space has been affected by such enormous changement in technologies, but not only in technologies. I don't know if it's possible to compare with other sectors. Maybe cybersecurity had the same impact of what's happening with space, and it's not only a technological impact, but it's also an economic impact. We always have heard about the contribution of the private resources to the development, and of course the revenues that come from the space to them. But we also, apart from hearing this concept, we hear every day about mega constellations, and we hear of what will happen with a hypersonic flight and the way in which we will change the way we reach other countries. But also we have heard enough about space tourism. So I would say something that affects not only our imagination, but affect not only our life, affect also the economy and the system in which we live. And for this reason, if we make a connection between territories, regions, in this case, states, countries, to these topics, we can surely better understand why so attention and so involvement and so actions by a regional government, which is, of course, not the only one in the world that does it. We know that there are other economies that are leveraging on the space activities in order to support the development of their economy. But this is what's happening in our region. And for this reason, we thought that it could be a good occasion to host maybe one of the most representative person that is dedicated to development of the concept of spaceport. In a way, we will hear from your words, George, what is a spaceport. Is only a pad launch? Is just a runway? Or is just a place in which we can take off and land? Or is something different? I think that we will hear from you, and I don't want to use your word or your concept, but just let me add that in our idea that is, I would say, that copies your approach, a spaceport is a place in which we create many things. We do not only assist operations, but in which there are opportunities to sustain research, in which it's possible to develop technologies, in which it's possible to host people, students, to inspire, so to create and to plant all the seeds that goes abroad, the concept of spaceport in a strict sense. And that's why a moment like this is plenty of significance, because if we want to do that, we can do only in a global dimension, according to the fact that from one side there is a need to support the development of the concept and of the use of the spaceport, guaranteeing also an economic viability of it, because it's not so easy, as you know, nowadays. But from the other side, I think that there are so many opportunities collaborating now in order to increase the know-how and the ability to develop these challenges. But I think that in the short future, it can be plenty of commercial opportunities. So starting cooperating now means using the seeds for a commercial cooperation in the next future. And we really believe in it. Just to give you an example, we will have in 15 days, again, in collaboration with the Apulia region, an incoming mission from the United States of America that will come to Apulia region to do what Mr. Cannito said, to start to create the opportunities to link universities for PhD, for courses, for exchange of students, to link Spaceport. We will have the director of Spaceport America in this meeting today. It will be an honor to hear from him, but we will have also him in Apulia in 15 days. So this is, I think, the strength that need to accompany our day-by-day effort in order to reinforce not only technological concept, not only vision, but to work day by day on what is already real, or what is already in our day by day. And I hope that this is another opportunity that we will contribute to create, to enlarge the perimeter of collaborations, not only institutional, but maybe also private collaboration between Apulia region, Italy, and other fantastic countries as your country, in order to give to this vision a concrete, let's say, reality and concrete impact on the life, not only of the Apulian people, but I would say of the human being. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Giuseppe, and welcome, everyone. Again, my name is Dr. George Neild. I'm currently serving as the chairman of the Global Spaceport Alliance, and it's my honor today to chair this special session on spaceports and the growing space economy. Ever since the Soviet Union launched Yuri Gagarin into space more than 60 years ago, almost all of the major achievements and historical milestones that we've seen in space have been done by governments. Whether we're talking about the X-15 program, Project Mercury, Project Gemini, the Apollo moon landings, 30 years of operating the space shuttle, and then living, building, and working on board the International Space Station, it has been governments which have been responsible for planning, developing, and carrying out those programs. But going forward, that is not necessarily going to be the case, because private industry is going to be playing an increasing role in those activities. How did this come about? Well, there's a couple of interesting milestones that I'd like to briefly talk about that have led to this increased importance of industry. The first of those is something called the Ansari X Prize. The X Prize was a $10 million prize for the first team to privately finance, build, and then fly a reusable spacecraft that would be capable of taking 3 people up to an altitude of 100 kilometers, returning safely to the Earth, and then performing that same mission again within 2 weeks to demonstrate it was not just a stunt, but something that could form the basis for a future business. When the prize was first announced, it got a lot of attention all over the world. In fact, there were 26 different teams from 7 different countries who registered to compete for the prize. A lot of different concepts, as you can see. In the end, though, it was a team led by Scaled Composites and their famed aviation designer, Burt Rutan, who came up with this very unusual concept, which included a carrier aircraft called the White Knight, and then a spaceship mounted underneath that you can see there. The vehicles took off from a runway in Mojave, California, in the United States, climbed up to altitude, released the spaceship, they fired their rocket engine, and zoomed up to 100 kilometers in altitude, returned to land on a runway, and then performed that same mission with the same vehicles less than 2 weeks later. So they won the $10 million prize. And after they returned, Spaceship One was hung in the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. And look at where it was hung. Right between the Spirit of St. Louis that Charles Lindbergh used when he flew the Atlantic and the X-1, which was the aircraft that Chuck Yeager flew when he first broke the sound barrier. That's how significant it was. Why did it go there? Because this showed for the first time that it no longer takes a government with thousands of people and billions of dollars to build a spaceship. So that got a lot of people's attention. And it's taken a little bit longer than many people were hoping, but now we're finally starting to see that come to fruition. Another very important milestone was NASA's decision to retire the space shuttle. And this was important because that meant that NASA would be reliant on private industry to take food, clothes, cargo, experiments, and eventually the astronauts themselves to and from the International Space Station. The shuttle was an amazing flying machine, but it was getting old, it was expensive, and there was risk involved. So that led to the decision for a retirement. So, what led to this interest in having private industry playing an increased role? Well, there's a number of reasons. Some of those, I think, include lower costs when a company is able to carry out a mission compared to a typical government program. We're likely to see increased innovation. Again, as someone who's worked for the government for most of my career, I recognize that the government tends to, when they find something that works, stick with it for a long period of time. And industry is more open to change. I believe industry also has a greater risk tolerance. Not that we're compromising safety, but that we're willing to look at benefits and risks of each change, each decision, each mode of operations. There's also an opportunity for new products, new services, and new customers. That's not the business of government, but that's what business is all about. And finally, there's an opportunity for new sources of funding and investment, and not just relying on taxpayer funds that Congress or the legislature approves for a particular program. So how does that working out? Well, I think the record has been pretty clear over the last few years that we're seeing some very positive results from this increase in reliance on commercial space. This chart shows the number of Federal Aviation Administration license launches from the United States or US companies over a long period of time, and you'll notice that just in the last 8 years or so, the number per year has increased dramatically. And last year, there were 157 FAA licensed launches. And there's no signs that that curve is turning around or even leveling off. How about human space flights from the United States? Since July of 2021, there have been 9 flights for government customers. We have 8 from SpaceX, 1 by Boeing, carried a total of 32 government astronauts. That's very good. But during that same period, there have been 26 flights for non-government customers from the United States. And they included 130 people being flown to space. Those missions included Inspiration 4, Polaris Dawn, Prom 2, 3 flights for Axiom customers. We had 9 flights for Virgin Galactic customers and 11 flights for Blue Origin customers. How about spaceports? Well, in the United States, there are currently 14 FAA licensed spaceports. Those are the ones shown in blue on this map. There's another dozens that are waiting in the wings saying, yes, we want to do that too. We just haven't turned in our application yet. In addition, of course, there are government-owned and operated sites shown in red, and some privately owned spaceports shown in black. And as you know, interest in space is not just limited to the United States. This chart by Bryce Tech shows the current or proposed spaceports around the world, and there's more than 100 that have stepped forward that says, yes, we want to do that kind of thing too. How about the global space economy? Well, the Space Foundation estimates that it now totals $570 billion. But the interesting thing about that is that less than a quarter of that total, the slices shown in yellow and gray here, represent government spending. More than 3/4 of that, the blue and the orange, that's spending by companies or consumers. So it has really turned around from the early days of space. And even more exciting, if you talk to all the economists and financial experts, there's a very strong consensus that that global space economy will exceed $1 trillion in just the next 5 to 10 years. So that's very exciting news. We believe that much of that economic growth could take place at or near spaceports. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, everything we do in space starts at a spaceport, but more importantly, spaceports are not just places from which you launch rockets. They can also be focal points and technology hubs to enable the creation of an overarching economic ecosystem for space-related activities. So what can you do at a spaceport? Let's talk about some of those things. Launch satellites, that will certainly continue on into the future. Space tourism, we now have Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and SpaceX now selling seats on flights. Aerospace manufacturing. This is a picture of the very large modern factory that Blue Origin has built right outside the gate of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And there's going to be a need to manufacture vehicles and landers and satellites, subsystems, and do final assembly and integration. How about research and technology development? Again, we need more work done on the vehicles themselves, satellites, rocket engines, parachutes, avionics, software, and many other fields. Education and training. There are experiences now that regular people can do rather than just government astronauts. There's a company called NASTAR in Philadelphia, which has a centrifuge that will spin you around and let you feel what those increased acceleration loads are like. 3Gs, 4Gs, 5Gs or more, so that you can be prepared for your space flight. There's a company called Zero G that operates parabolic aircraft flights where you can, for about 20 seconds at a time, feel what weightlessness is like. Companies offer opportunities to go through altitude chamber training. When we fly in an airliner, we hear the safety briefing about a sudden change in cabin pressure. What should you do? Well, you can do that in a safe environment to experience what that's like and recognize your symptoms for hypoxia when you don't have enough oxygen so that you can be prepared should an emergency occur during an actual space flight. And that makes for safer operations. There's other companies that will let you try on a spacesuit and see what a spacewalk would be like. How about workforce development? Workforce is so important. I see huge opportunities for partnerships between spaceports and high schools, community colleges, universities to conduct classes, complete projects, do training, or offer internships, co-ops, or apprenticeships. And one of my favorite activities, point-to-point transportation. We'll talk about each of those in a little bit more detail in just a minute. Let's start with research. There's a lot of need for additional work in materials and propulsion and hypersonic aerodynamics, but let's talk about the effect that spaceflight has on the human body. NASA has over 60 years of data on how spaceflight affects the health of its astronauts. However, NASA astronauts typically tend to be rather young and in excellent health and in outstanding physical condition. But look at what we're seeing now. Some recent commercial astronauts. Wally Funk flew on a Blue Origin flight at age 82, thereby becoming the oldest person ever to fly to space. William Shatner broke her record and flew at the age of 90. As you know, William Shatner was made famous from Star Trek, the movies and the TV show. Haley Arsenault was a childhood cancer survivor. She flew on the Inspiration 4 mission. John Goodwin, age 80, who had previously been diagnosed with Parkinson's, flew on a Virgin Galactic flight. There is no way any of those people could have flown as a NASA astronaut, but I think they're much more representative of the kind of people that we're going to see living, working, or visiting space in the future as a result of commercial spaceflight. Let's talk about human spaceflight training. Even though it's been a long time since NASA retired the shuttle, they are still having their astronauts fly in high-performance jet trainers, the T-38, which they base down in Houston, because they believe it's a very good way to prepare for your eventual space flight. You have to do a lot of multitasking, talking on the radio, navigating, controlling the vehicle, while experiencing high speeds and high altitudes and increased accelerations. Well, there's a lot of companies and people who own aircraft with similar characteristics. There's no reason why those could not operate from spaceports to give more people an idea of what spaceflight is like before they actually strap in on top of a rocket. Now, one of my favorites, point-to-point transportation through space. I believe that the ability to fly from one point on the Earth to the opposite side of the planet in just an hour or two is going to be a tremendous game changer, not only for national security, but for economic competitiveness. A lot of people, when I talk about that, say, oh yes, maybe my grandkids will get a chance to do that, but that's a long way off. No, it's not. We are almost there when it comes to the technology, and one example of that is SpaceX's Starship. Of course, that vehicle was designed by Elon Musk and SpaceX to colonize Mars or to take NASA astronauts down to the surface of the moon and back. But that same vehicle would have the ability to fly a point-to-point mission and reach most destinations on Earth in a half an hour, anywhere in less than an hour. It is a huge rocket. The pressurized volume is greater than an Airbus 380. So it could carry several hundred people or 100 metric tons of cargo on a single launch. Think about that. Such a change. Now, again, that's a big rocket. It's not going to be able to operate from every kind of spaceport, especially those close to populated areas, right? But there are other companies that are looking at that same mission that are a little bit smaller, a little bit less capable, but still designed for high-speed, long-distance transportation. Some of those are vertical takeoff and landing. Some are horizontal takeoff and landing that use runways. And some of those companies are shown here: Hermeus, Stoke Space, New Frontier Aerospace, Radiant Aerospace, Venus Aerospace, Rocket Lab. I'm sure there's others too. And this is not just in the United States. Switzerland has a Destinus vehicle they're working on. The Netherlands is now testing. A company, Dawn Aerospace, is testing its vehicle in New Zealand. Germany has its Polaris, and Canada is working on a system called Space Engine Systems. Let's take a look at it. Just a few case studies just to reinforce the idea of what kinds of systems could make sense at spaceports close to populated areas. This is Dawn Aerospace's vehicle called the Mark II Aurora. It's very small, only about 5 meters in length, but it takes off and lands on a runway, and they're in flight tests right now in New Zealand. They've done more than 50 flights. It will be capable of flying 3 times the speed of sound, Mach 3, and reaching the edge of space, 100 kilometers in altitude, and then coming back and landing on a runway. But the exciting thing is they believe that they could fly this 100 times a year or twice a day if required. And they've already demonstrated flying twice a day in New Zealand. So they're taking a step-by-step approach to their flight tests. Currently, they've exceeded 82,000 feet and broken the sound barrier, and things are going very well. Again, not for carrying people, small experiments or sensors that would have lots of applications. I can see this type of a vehicle operating out of spaceports around the world. Another example, a little different. This is vertical takeoff and landing, called the Intercontinental Rocket Liner. It's being designed and evaluated by New Frontier Aerospace. Again, it's not designed to launch satellites into orbit, but to do point-to-point transportation, first of cargo and eventually for people. It's about 41 meters tall, would be able to fly 8 times the speed of sound at an altitude of 50 kilometers, so well above normal airline traffic. And that is under development now. Here's an example of a spaceport. We're going to hear from other spaceports later today. But the Houston spaceport is very interesting to me because I think you can make a case that is one of the most successful spaceports in the world. And yet, they have never launched a single launch vehicle. So what's going on here? Houston has its reputation of working with NASA and mission control during the Apollo programs and the space shuttle and space station programs, not launching rockets, but they recognize they can't live on that record forever. So they're strategic thinkers. We're looking to the future and deciding we want Houston to be an intermodal transportation hub for roads, railroads, maritime, aviation, and space flight, specifically things like point-to-point transportation. And the technology's not quite there yet, but they wanted to start down that path. So they have built partnerships with government, like the Johnson Space Center at NASA, with academia, Rice University, University of Houston, and with industry. Some of the companies that have been encouraged and agreed to base operations there at the spaceport include Axiom Space, which is planning to build a commercial space station and also spacesuits. Intuitive Machines, which is one of the private companies that recently landed a rover on the moon's surface. Collins Aerospace, which has done work with spacesuits and avionics in the past. And Venus Aerospace, which is trying to build a hypersonic airliner. And so what are the benefits? Already, without any launches, we're seeing that those companies at the Houston spaceport have accumulated more than $4 billion in contracts. $200 million in construction projects have already been completed, and they're expecting 2,500 new jobs over the next 5 years. So this is one definition of success. Now, not every spaceport is alike, and each spaceport can decide what is the goals that it wants to achieve, what does it want to do, what kind of missions does it want to accomplish. But here's a model for the kind of thing that other spaceports could do. So bottom line, spaceports can be a tremendous enabler for economic growth, and I think every country should have at least one. So that's a little context for what we'll be talking about today. And at this time, I would like to invite Naoko Yamazaki, former JAXA astronaut and current representative director for Spaceport Japan Association, to give her perspective. Naoko.
Hello, everyone. My name is Naoko Yamazaki. Thank you for the kind introduction, George. It is my great honor and pleasure to be here with you. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to our Italy Pavilion, Region Pluna, and our Embassy of Italy in Japan for getting us all together. And thanks, George, for your continued leadership to connecting all the spaceport in the world, and to each representative and each participant who makes this happen. Thank you so much. So could you go to the next page? Shall we do it? Okay. Okay. So currently, I am a representative director of Spaceport Japan Association, which was established in 2018, and to promote aerospace industry in Japan and to position Japan as an Asian hub. This is a non-profit platform with more than 60 private companies and 5 academic institutions, 14, and now Chiba Prefecture joined us recently, so we have 15 global, local governments, and I'll explain this a little bit more later. So we have 7 co-founders and directors. you can see the bottom picture from the left, marketing expert and investment expert and space lawyer and myself and All Nippon Airways and 2 JAXA expert engineers. And I'm proud to be a member of Global Spaceport Alliance under the leadership of George. So our major members include airliners, including All Nippon Airways and Japan Airlines, and the spacecraft developers like Airbus Japan and PD Aerospace Space Walker Innovative Space Carrier. Those 3 are startup companies in Japan. And airport, spaceport, like a Japan Airport Terminal operates Haneda International Airport in Tokyo. And Mitsubishi Estate operates Okinawa Airport, Shimoji Island Airport. And the Space Cotton, Odagiri-san will explain later today, and Astro Ocean and Offshore. And infrastructure, construction, media, finance, insurance, consulting, education. So we have a wider range of industry members. And like, as George mentioned, spaceport is not just on the site of launch site and entry site, but it's in a city. It is a regional economy. So we published the Spaceport City concept in 2020 to emphasize the importance of spaceports to the government or other areas of industries or local governments. And we've been a member of the Japanese Public-Private Council for suborbital flights. Let me explain this background a little bit more, because Space Act law is under the Cabinet Office in Japan, which controls and manages vertical space flights. And aviation law is under the Ministry of Transportation in Japan. And suborbital flights is kind of between those 2. So we didn't know which ministry or how to regulate those suborbital flights. So we created this private-public council about 6 years ago, and still the discussion is going on. It takes a long time. But now we agreed to how to make an experimental suborbital flight. And next phase is how to regulate operational and human suborbital flights. So it's still going on. And the co-founders, including myself, have supported space policy making as members of various space policy committees, including JAXA, Strategic Fund, and so on. So this is an overview of spaceports in Japan. We have 2 JAXA government spaceports, Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency spaceports, in Kagoshima prefectures. On the right map, it's in a blue dot. And Hokkaido Spaceport and Space Cotton has more than 35 years history, and it's in operational already. And Wakayama is also in operational, and Shimose-san will explain Spaceport key later. And Fukushima and offshore are still experimental phase. And Oita Spaceport and Okinawa Shimoji Island Spaceport, those 2 are utilizing existing runways in each airport. So it's still under planning phase. So recently, the Oita Spaceport was selected as a selection committee special award under the Cabinet Office for the Open Innovations Prize already this year. So the concept is Oita Spaceport is a candidate of Sierra Space Dream Chaser's potential landing site. And once it lands to Oita Airport, it could be launched by the Japanese rocket from Tanegashima JAXA launch site, as long as it gets open to the commercial launch flight as well. And then it can bring lots of cargo or even humans, space crew, eventually to the space station, ISS, or commercial space station. So it gets an eco cycle like this. And right now, currently, all the specimens conducted on board the International Space Station can be retrieved inside the United States. So we have to make an initial assessment and our research inside the United States, and then we can bring back the specimen after that. So if we can bring back directly the specimen to Japan, it can create lots of R&D as well. And the spaceport, it's lots of synergies, of course, the space transportation, but also the space utilization and the space experiments under the microgravity. So good synergy. And Spaceport Japan are supporting this project with among lots of entities. And also, it is a good educational impact. The regional high school, it has a specific space course inside the high school. And they had a joint workshop together with the UK Spaceport Cornwall, their regional high school. So we have a joint educational program as well, and I look forward to expanding those collaborations among Italy and the United States to inspire the younger generations. And of course, Spaceport Hokkaido and Spaceport Key has already operational, and they created lots of innovations so far. So this is a key initiative of Japan's basic space plans. Every 5 years, it is revised by the Japanese government. In the recent revision, include new space transportation system like a deep space and high-speed point-to-point and human space tourism. Those kind of new areas should be led by private sector. And launch site, spaceports, test facilities are very important infrastructures. So those facilities should be developed by public-private collaboration. And we aiming to establish a sustainable human presence in space. So ISS is a great symbol of collaboration among nations and the public-private sectors as well. And when I flew to the ISS, I was very honored to deliver Leonardo, Italian-developed logistics module to the ISS. Also, I enjoyed the cupola, which was also designed and developed by Italy's companies. So thank you very much. And now Artemis Accords, Artemis program has more than about 54 nations involved, and which was led by United States. Of course, it's maybe revised a little bit, but Moon to Mars direction will remain the same, I believe. And Italy and Japan are both among the 8 original signatories to the Artemis Accords. So I'm looking forward to this project as well. And once we establish human presence in deep space, we need spaceports on the Moon and Mars eventually, because we need to create a base or infrastructure. So we need to deliver cargo or even crew to a specific location. So that is why Japan, JAXA sent a SLIM, it means a small, but it's small, lander to the Moon with an accuracy of 55 meters. So it should be more accurate eventually. So, Josh, I would like to see your Global Spaceport Alliance expanding to Solar System Spaceport Alliance in the future. So, I'd like to emphasize the importance of spaceports again. It is bridging various locations on the Earth, also Earth to space and even deep space. So our home planet is so beautiful in the bluish, in the blue light, and there's lots of lives. And at the same time, of course, we have lots of issues on the ground. So to solve these issues on the ground, I think securing the access to space has widened our potential, widened our capabilities to solve all the problems. So it's an access to space and access to the future. So thank you so much. Looking forward to more collaboration with you.
Thank you, Naoko. Excellent presentation. This time I'd like to invite our panelists up to the stage. We have several excellent speakers today, and our plan would be to have each of them give about a 5-minute overview and presentation, and then we'll have some time for some questions. Our regulator today is Giovanni D'Antonio. He is the director of the Technological Innovation Division at ENAC, the Italian Civil Aviation Authority. And Giovanni, why don't you start us off today?
Thank you, George. And thank you to Regione Puglia for having me today in this important event and among these distinguished and important guests. And I'll try to provide you a presentation explaining what we are doing in Italy in order to develop the Grottaglie Spaceport site. And okay, I can go. My department in the civil aviation is the Technological Innovation Department, which deals with the development of regulations for suborbital flight in particular and spaceport, and also it is in charge to follow research projects in this field. So I like to start with this picture. You must have noticed George there, and this was the signing of the Memorandum of Cooperation between the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, Office of Space Commerce, at that time led by George, and we signed a Memorandum of Cooperation 10 years ago in 2014, then renewed in 2016 with the participation of our space agency for the development of commercial space transportation in Italy, particularly focused on suborbital flight. And after that signing, we started carrying out certain studies that ended with the Address Act from the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport in 2017 that asked ENAC to develop a regulatory framework for spaceport and suborbital flight. And a year later, in 2018, the Ministry issued a new Address Act that identified the Grottaglie Spaceport as the first national site eligible to become a spaceport in Italy and in the European Union. And you can see there the runway from Grottaglie Spaceport. And we also supported the development, the foundation of the Grottaglie Spaceport Association, which is an association aimed to steer the development of the spaceport according to a coherent vision. And ENAC is leading this association, who is participated by public and private institutions. Since then, the big work ENAC did in this year has been the creation of the ad hoc regulatory framework for spaceport and suborbital flight. We issued, in cooperation with the major stakeholders, the spaceport regulation in 2020, and then updated in 2023, and the suborbital operations regulations issued in 2023. And we are working now on a very strategic piece of regulation, which is the regulation for the structure, for the use and management of the airspace, in order to let these operations access the airspace. All these regulation has been based on the FAA regulation, the part 420, 450. Because one driver we would like to have is creating the commonality of the regulation between Italy and the United States in order to create a familiar environment for the US operators in particular that are interested in operating in our country. So we are developing what we call a multi-purpose co-located horizontal spaceport. So a spaceport basically co-located in a certified airport, multi-purpose because it could be able to host both suborbital and orbital operations, but horizontal, which means takeoff through takeoff and landing operation, horizontal takeoff and landing operations. The main challenge we have is let airport become a spaceport. And in particular, like the Houston was an excellent example. So in particular, what we have to do, first of all, we have to find a reference vehicle and operation, so we have to know which kind of operation we would like to host in the airport. Then we have to take care about the public safety in terms of ground risk calculation, taking into account the actual population density we have around the spaceport in the region. The infrastructure adaptation and organization, which is one of the main challenges we have facing in this period. The airspace management, which is very important. The spaceport, okay, is not just landing, it's something, other things, including the airspace above that allows this object to go to space. Then we have the issue of the operations coordination. Grottaglie Spaceport Board has an industrial airport, an industrial hub. There are many industrial activities from Leonardo and other companies. The problem is how to coordinate in the future all these kind of operations when a space operator will come and would like to operate maybe on a daily basis. Finally, as all spaceport, we have to take account of the public acceptance. What we can do at Spaceport, George already described the various kind of operation we can have. At Grottaglie Spaceport, we can have a aerospace training center. You have seen the centrifuge in Philadelphia there. And the parabolic flight, it's from 0G, suborbital flight, test bed for drone and higher platform systems, higher space platform systems, supersonic experimental flight, you can see there the X-59, and re-entry from orbit and aero launching into orbit. All these kind of operations can be carried out in an horizontal spaceport. But our main operator we are working with in this period is Virgin Galactic, and because we want Virgin Galactic become the reference operator of our spaceport, and for that reason, and thanks to the work we have done in this year, last year we have entered into an agreement with Virgin Galactic to understand and define the conditions under which their operations can be carried out safely and sustainably in our spaceport. And this we are working hard with Virgin Galactic for carried out this feasibility study, which pertains, for example, all the aspects like the ground risk, the airspace management, the development of infrastructure, the environmental aspects, and the preliminary compliance assessment to ANAC regulation. This is, we think that hosting suborbital A-to-A flight for the aim of space tourism is an intermediate step toward the vision George explained to have a suborbital operations, because we would like Grottaglie Spaceport become a point in the net of the international global spaceport. That's why last year we also adhered to the Global Spaceport Alliance, because we want to be part of a global net. But in order to allow this kind of the future of aerospace transportation, there are a lot of challenges, because in order to transport people suborbital, we have to pass from what we have now, so suborbital operations above the desert in New Mexico, for example, to a more complex operations that would like to host in Italy. I mean, operating above sparsely populated environment with a modular airspace management, in order in the future to achieve a full integration of these operations within a complex environment, populated environment. Because, okay, if you spend 2 hours to go from one continent to another, you cannot afford to spend 4 hours to get to the city center. So necessarily, these operations has to be carried out and integrated in complex environment. And hosting Virgin Galactic Flight in our environment, it's an intermediate step toward that goal. So opportunity for innovation, you know, George already explained. We have many aspects for innovation. Airspace management, because we have to transit from a static segregation and reservation to a modular one, for example. We have to integrate aviation and space operations and understand how to adapt spaceport into airport into spaceport. But one important thing is that we should learn how to safely transport people up to high altitude, because it is essential to understand how to protect people. And one characteristic of our regulation with respect to the US one is that despite the US regulation, we have also introduced a requirement for the safety of the occupants. Very high level requirement, performance based, but in Europe, in Italy, we have to ensure, due to our juridical culture, a minimum level of safety for the occupants. So we have also introduced some element on that respect that will allow a protection of the occupant to a certain level of safety. Of course, not the same level of aviation, but a minimum level of safety that has to be communicated to the participant. And finally, this exercise will allow us also to find new means of compliance, new way, new characteristics, new means of compliance to the regulations. The opportunities are very well explained: new market for space tourism and experimentation, infrastructure investment, STEM and high-tech job creation, possibility of international collaboration and dual-use services, because these technologies are inherently dual-use, civil and military, national industry involvement and regional intermodality transport. And finally, local tourism. In order to exploit these opportunities at the local level, ENAC has recently entered into an agreement with the local industry association of the Taranto province, because it's important to exploit the opportunities for the local industry. I thank you for your attention. This is all. Maybe we can answer questions later on. Thank you, John.
Very good. Thank you, Giovanni. That was excellent. Our next speaker is going to be Scott McLaughlin. He's going to be joining us virtually. He's the Executive Director of Spaceport America. Can you hear us, Scott?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, it sounds good. And so about 5 minutes, and then we'll proceed on and hopefully have some time for questions.
All right. Very good, George. Thank you very much. Sorry I could not be there to everyone, but I'll go ahead and get started with my PowerPoint real quick. So let me share the screen. Let's see. Are you seeing that?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to, okay, it went away.
So we can see it. Yes, go ahead. Just tell us what slide you want it to be on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. All right, so George already did a good job talking about spaceports in the United States, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew where Spaceport America was. So we're right here in the southern part of New Mexico. You can see where we are compared to the other spaceports. And New Mexico, the whole state of New Mexico right here, only has about 2 million people in it, whereas I think California is much larger, for example. So that gives you an idea of how rural we are. So here's the spaceport up close. And so we're on right here about 18,000 acres. I forget what that is in hectares. I think I have it in another slide. But the important thing is right here, this red boundary right here, this rectangle right here is the size of White Sands Missile Range, which is about 180 kilometers if you go to what's called the extended range, 180 kilometers tall and I think about 80 kilometers wide. The blue is the airspace that's controlled by White Sands Missile Range, and that's part of what makes Spaceport America such a unique spaceport, is that we're under the airspace control of the Army instead of the FAA. So that can go back and forth. We work primarily with White Sands, but we also work with FAA directly, so it kind of depends on whether we're on a weekday or a weekend. And that gives us some benefits. It also gives us some drawbacks. The drawbacks are that White Sands Missile Range activities, U.S. Army White Sands Missile Range activities take precedence. In our, there we go, 7,200 hectares. In our 7,200 hectares right here, we divided up the spaceport into 3 areas. Most people are familiar with the horizontal launch area. That's where Virgin Galactic operates, and that's where we have the runway. But we also have an area halfway down where we call it the vertical launch area, and that's where we have up aerospace, and we've had some other vertical tests down there. And then in the very southern portion, we have what we call the advanced technology area, and that is where spin launch is. The vertical launch area has electricity, but we don't have any water. The advanced technology area doesn't have anything. It's very primitive. The horizontal launch area has everything we need. It has water and electricity and fiber. And we're far enough away that this is all operated by Spaceport America, and that includes the fact that we have our own fire department, our own ambulance EMS, and our own security. So here's a close-up of the runway, about 3,600 meters by 60 meters. This was designed specifically to accommodate the Virgin Galactic's White Knight 2. And then here's the gateway to space, which was known a long time ago, and it was built as a terminal hangar facility. And again, all of this area already has electricity and water. Right now, we're building some new roads. We're putting in a launch hangar here that it can be leased by anybody. But we have a lot of area to expand. So unlike Houston Spaceport that George talked about, which is in an urban area, we're in a very rural area. So it's a whole different way to kind of expand and try and get the benefits of having a spaceport. Here are some key dates. One thing that is very key to all of us in the commercial industry in the United States is the 1984 U.S. Commercial Space Launch Act, which allows private companies other than the government to go to space. And shortly after that is when New Mexico really started looking at having a spaceport. So there was this early phase of the spaceport in the early 90s to try and get some support and figure out where we could put a spaceport. In 1994, something came about called the Southwest Regional Spaceport. And so this was a very strong effort to build the spaceport. And it included things like the Lockheed Martin Venture Star, which was going to be a single stage to orbit vehicle. And we concentrated at that time mostly on reentry. But as George pointed out, the X Prize came around, the Ansari X Prize came around. And when that was won by Scale Composites, our governor, the governor of New Mexico, and Sir Richard Branson, struck a deal, and there were other states that were also trying to get the Virgin Galactic vehicle to come to their state, but we were able to win out on that. But it required building a spaceport. It required creating a new law, the Spaceport Development Act. It required that 2 counties in the area help fund the spaceport, and the state funded the spaceport. So about $250 million was spent. And then in 2006, the very first flight by Up Aerospace, and in 2021, Virgin Galactic was the first human space flight from New Mexico, which made New Mexico the 3rd state to host humans going to space. So here's a quick look at some of the things we do. I'm going to magnify the slide so we can kind of look at it. So again, we've done lots of vertical launches. We've done rocket engine testing out at the vertical launch area. Here is Aero Environment, which is funded. It's a partnership with SoftBank. This is about 100 meters long and about 3 meters wide, and this flies up to 62,000 feet. We have another similar type, what's called a high altitude platform system. This is from Swift Engineering. Here's one from BAE Prismatic. So those are all designed to fly 60,000 feet and above and stay up for about 6 months at a time. We've also done all kinds of UAV work out there. This one is from Precision AI, which is supposed to be used for agriculture to spray chemicals. Of course, we've had cars out there racing up and down on the runway. This is Jay Leno. And then Spin Launch, which is a kinetic launch system, is in the southern part of the spaceport you've probably heard about. And then, of course, we have Virgin Galactic, which I'll talk about just again in just a second. One of the unique things about Spaceport America was the building that got built, which again was called the terminal and hangar facility, which made it a very complicated building. Trying to build a hangar and an airline terminal basically in the same building makes for a really complicated fire suppression system. So I warn everybody building a spaceport to be careful about that. Just to zoom in a little bit, though, this building has become an iconic building for Spaceport America and is well recognized around the world for being Spaceport America. Here's the hangar portion with the White Knight 2 in it. The hangar facility was designed to hold 2 White Knight 2s, one on either side, and 3 spaceships in the middle, although Virgin Galactic is going to be building a launch hangar and won't be using this quite the same way as they originally planned. But here it is from the outside. It was designed to blend in with the characteristics of the mountain and the desert. But like I said, it's turned into quite an iconic building for our facility. New Mexico, I won't go into all the details of this, only to say that New Mexico is kind of rich in space activities. That gives us kind of a first mover advantage, if you will, but that doesn't guarantee success. It does mean that we have maybe more resources to draw on. Some important things we have to draw on are the presence of the U.S. Space Force, Los Alamos National Laboratory, and some other laboratories up north. But space is hard. Like I mentioned, we signed our agreement with Virgin Galactic in 2006, and so it's now 2025. Virgin Galactic has gone to space several times, but they're in a pause right now while they're building 2 new spaceships. These are really going to be advanced compared to the one they have flown, because they're going to be designed to fly every 3 days as opposed to every 3 weeks. But in that amount of time, it was very difficult. It has been difficult to keep a momentum, to keep stakeholders happy. And then what is success of a spaceport? Giovanni spoke about it, George spoke about it, but I get asked all the time, are we going to generate revenue? Are we going to pay for ourselves? What about economic impact? Is that going to pay for the spaceport jobs? How about extending the space cluster growth in the entire region? Is that going to, quote unquote, pay for the spaceport? And as George and Giovanni mentioned, we need STEM, we need universities, we need workforce. And of course, in the meantime, other spaceports are moving fast at the same time, trying to attract business. So what do I recommend? I recommend having a foundational partner is key. If you can be a spaceport and have a foundational partner, that puts you ahead of just trying to look for business. But you really need the local and regional support. And you're not going to get it unless you communicate clearly. And you can't set up the spectators, the stakeholders for failure. You can't confuse them. It's going to be, you need to tell them it's going to be a long road. Nothing's going to happen quickly. And everybody's got to be aboard though. If you oversell and you don't reach the marks that you think you're going to make, you're going to have trouble keeping the process alive. And we've seen that in the United States with a couple of spaceports. And also just being innovative and collaborative, like we have, hosting HAPS systems, UAVs and other systems, you're going to have to pay attention to the market and be willing to pivot if you have to. So I think that's it. This is a picture from Spaceport America that was taken by Up Aerospace with a NASA Opportunities craft. I think this was about 77 miles up, so a little over 100 kilometers. So thank you, George, and I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, next up we have Yoshinori Odihiri, who is President and CEO of Space Koten and the Hokkaido Spaceport.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased, very much honored to participate in this session today. So firstly, we'd like to show you the videos, movies. Please go ahead.
The global space industry market is projected to be up to $1 trillion by 2040, with small satellite launches propelling it to a prominent global industry. The number of launch sites for these satellites are limited.
シェアするスペースポートということでございますけれども、より公共性を高めてですね、皆さんに使っていただく。
The Hokkaido Spaceport is the first commercial spaceport in Asia. It is open to all domestic and foreign businesses, including private companies, governments, and universities. The spaceport is located in Taiki, a small town in Hokkaido. Taiki has been working since 1985 to attract space-related businesses and foster the space industry. Many organizations, which include the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, has been carrying out aerospace experiments here. A private launch vehicle startup company built a factory and achieved suborbital launches. Taiki has several geographical advantages. One is that the ocean stretches east and south, the prime directions for launches, enabling it to meet all satellite launch requirements. Moreover, the vast area allows for the establishment of multi-launch sites and the subsequent launching of many launch vehicles. Taiki has the highest number of clear days in Japan, making it a perfect location for launches. Located near the Tokachi Obihiro Airport and Tokachi Port means we have suitable transport and logistic networks for visitors and businesses. Still, we are far enough away that air and sea routes don't interfere with launches. We plan to build 2 new launch sites for the orbital launch vehicles. The first, LC-1, Launch Complex 1, is under construction, and LC-2 is in the planning stages. The construction of LC-2 will start after LC-1 is completed. A 3,000-meter runway to accommodate space shuttle-style aircraft is also planned.
ここ大樹町からですね、宇宙版シリコンバレーを作っていこうということを標榜しています。将来的には航空宇宙産業の産業集積というのをここ北海道に広げていくということを考えています。
Companies developing launch vehicles and satellites and using satellite data have sprung up in Hokkaido and are attracting attention from overseas. Making the Hokkaido spaceport a hub spaceport for Asia will boost space industry growth and enhance the competitiveness of Hokkaido's agriculture, forestry, fishery, and tourism industries. Hokkaido Spaceport will play a central role in this effort.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So first slide is the could you stop the moment? Thank you very much. The first slide is just as of today of the Hokkaido Spaceport. Next slide is a year later. Next year, summer of the next year, the LC-1 construction will be completed in the area. So please go ahead to the second stage, second movie. Thank you very much. The vertical launch rocket is simulated of the IST, Interstellar Technologies, which is a Japanese company. They will be planning to first launch in sometimes in the next year. So second horizontal landing and takeoff vehicle is now planning to the using that Hokkaido spaceport. They are now planning to experimental launch and landing sometimes in few years. So Taiki Town is located up north of the Hokkaido, quite small town. Its main industry is fishery and farming. The population is just around 5,200, very small. As same as other cities, as a small town in Japan, this number is decreasing steadily. In such remote and tiny local town, space business has started in 1985. Since then, business development has been continuing and lasting almost 40 years. In April 2021, the Space Kotan, our company has established, which was led by Taiki local government for starting up full-scale commercial space-related business in those areas. So one of our strengths point, we have 5 core strengths point. As you may recall, pretty much similar geographic circumstances with the Kennedy Space Center in the USA. Alongside of the Pacific Ocean, and you can see the apparently widely open to the south side and the eastern side. One of the key features is a great flexibility in choosing the orbital inclinations. Since 1985, several achievements have been accomplished, especially in 2019, the Japanese very first private liquid fuel suborbital rocket reached to the 100 kilometers distance at the Interstellar Technologies. After that, in 2021, Flight 6 and Flight 7 and followed to the Flight 3. Proceeding to the construction of the LC-1, the service of newly introducing vehicle at Interstellar Technologies, which size is 32 meters length and 2.3 meters diameters, as you see the movie. The vehicle is planning to maiden flight sometimes in a few years. And other than the IST, Interstellar Technologies, the several spaceport startup business entities are aiming to launch vehicles soon at our facilities. Not only the Japanese company, but also the international global company as well. And as you saw, we have plenty unused land area around the launch site. So huge potentiality we have for the future launching customers. And most of the people imagine the winter season, we will have much snow in the northern area, but eastern side of the Hokkaido area, our town, the relatively less snow falling compared with the western side, such like Sapporo or Niseko area. And also the connection between Tokyo and Taiki is quite convenient. 1.5 hours flight time from Tokyo. After arriving at the airport, only 30 minutes drive to reach the launch site. It is quite easy to access. So our future is a multi-use, As I said, our position is geographically is very convenient, and also we have some of the achievement and the high capability for both horizontal and the vertical launch. And also the weather condition is good, and also the accessibility to Tokyo is very nice. And our future is we are aiming to the multi-use for both vertical and horizontal launch capabilities. At this moment, we have the under construction of the LC-1 for the vertical launch with the orbital launch. And in future, we will have, at this moment, we have only 1,300 meters runways. But in future, we will planning to have 3,000 meters runways alongside with a conventional runway. And also we are aiming to in addition to the launch site operations and management of the spaceport, our important business goal is establishing the spaceport city in the Hokkaido area, integrating the space business in the region, and we'd like to build up the space industry accumulations in the Hokkaido regions. It would be our pleasure to welcome you to the Hokkaido Spaceport during this expo period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yoshinari. Next up is Patrizio Suma, who is Director of Special Projects and Performance Control at Aeroporti di Apulia SPA.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for all. Good morning. I'm Patrizio Summa, Special Project Director of Aeroporti di Puglia. This is the management company owned by Apulia region for the management of the airport network. We manage 4 airports in Puglia region, and then we have dedicated one of these airports, Grottaglie, to industrial operations. Grottaglie born as an industrial airport because in our strategic planning we have dedicated this infrastructure only for special operations. And then since 2007 we make some construction, some works in order to prolong the runway, to reinforce the flight infrastructure in order to host a huge plant, a huge facility of Leonardo company for the production of the fuselage of Boeing 787 Dreamliner. And then in this infrastructure we host all other companies and operations of industrial operations. In 2014, with a special act of ENAC, the Civil Aviation Authority, the Italian Civil Aviation Authority, Grottaglie was designed as a test bed for experiment, test, and operations, special operations for unmanned vehicles. And then from 2014, we started all these operations, special operations, with other stakeholders, ENAC, ENAV, the ATM provider, and other companies. In 2018, after a technical selection made by ENAC, Grottaglie was designed by the Italian Ministry of Transport as the first national spaceport of Italy. The geographical setting is very positive because Grottaglie is near the sea, the Ionian Sea in southeast Italy, and it is linked with all the national roads, highway, and airports near the site of Grottaglie. Brindisi and Bari, there are the commercial airports, are very near, 1 hour by car, and then we can have an easy access to these facilities. Grottaglie has a master plan approved by the Civil Aviation Authority that for the future, until 2013, we have in progress some works about new facilities, new operations for new companies, to host new companies. We make a tender, we publish a tender in previous time in order to design, to find the designers of the spaceport, and after a European tender, we selected a group managed by Aeroporti di Roma that designed the facilities, the infrastructure. The aim is to have a flexible infrastructure. It's a strange word, but we hope that the facilities will host a multi-purpose, a multi-client, a multi-operator facility. We think that the spaceport will host different type of operations, like suborbital flights, like avio launch of satellites, like return to base operation, landing operations. The concept of this, our spaceport was designed by Camerana architect, and with the help of the Politecnico of Torino. The facility that we are designed with our stakeholders, our partners, is made by a great hangar with dimension for the Boeing 747, an apron, a multi-purpose building, because we think that the spaceport is not only a technical infrastructure, but we think that in the multi-purpose building will host visitors, training center, space for cooperation with the university, and also other operations that create a background around the facility that will help the economic development of our land. Now, with ENAC, we are in progress with the feasibility study with Virgin Galactic, because ENAC subscribed in 2024 an agreement in order to study the feasibility of this operation in Grottaglie, but we are now continuing in designing and for the construction of these facilities. And Regione Puglia has subscribed an agreement with the national government in November 2024 in order to finance these facilities with 70 million from cohesion funds, Italian national cohesion funds. And then we are very engaged we are involved in this great project with all our stakeholders. Aeroporti di Puglia is part of Cryptalia Spaceport, that it is this association coordinated by ENAC, the Italian Civil Aviation Authority, with the Italian ATM provider, with other companies, also CIRA, that is the International Center of Research in Italy, and we hope that in few years we are ready to operate in this new spaceport. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Patrizio. And finally, we have Shigeru Shimose, Corporate Officer of Space One and Director of Spaceport Key.
Piacere, sono Shigeru Shimose. Ah. すいません、ここからは日本語にさせていただきます。改めまして、スペースワン株式会社スペースポートキーの所長をしております下瀬茂です。よろしくお願いします。本日は、貴重なお時間いただきましてありがとうございます。これから我々のスペースワンとそのスペースポートキーという発射場について簡単にご説明させていただきたいと思います。我々スペースワンは小型の人工衛星を、軌道投入迅速柔軟かつ正確に行うということを、なりわいとする民間の輸送サービス企業です。今まで皆さんがお話してきたようにこの宇宙経済というのが今、世界中で40兆円を超えるというような規模になっていると思いますが、その中で日本が、持っているシェアというのがわずか 5% 程度しかないというところです。でこれはなぜかというと、日本にはこの宇宙に関わる企業が非常に少ないというところがまだあると思っています。まだまだ宇宙利用に参画するにはハードルが高い、費用が とてもかかるというところがあり、そこで我々スペースワンというものが立ち上がりました。スペースワンは2018年に設立されまして、宇宙へより早く確実にそして低コストでアクセスできるようにするということが、我々の、ターゲットになっています。我々は宇宙が一部の人に限られたものではなくて、全ての人が使えるようにするというところを目標に考えています。では、まずこの動画をご覧いただきたいんですが。この動画は、前回の打ち上げですね、去年の12月に打ち上げましたカイロスロケット2号機の動画になります。この2号機で、カイロスロケットは高度100キロ以上の宇宙空間に到達することができました。スペースワンの特徴は大きく4つあります。信頼性、即応性、柔軟性、低価格性です。我々の開発したカイロスロケットは、日本が得意とする固体燃料技術を用いた機体を使っています。
Thank you very much.
また、契約から打ち上げまでを世界最速を目指しているというところと、この車上の立地を生かした、多様な軌道投入ができるということ、また最後に、このシンプルな車上運用による低価格を目指しています。当時日本には衛星を打ち上げるロケットの車上というのが JAXA の2つしかありませんでしたが、これらは日本の基幹ロケットの打ち上げを担っておりまして、民間の商用利用が想定されていませんでした。そこで我々は、自由に打ち上げられるミッションを達成させるために、独自の人工衛星打ち上げ用のロケットとこの発射場の開発が必要不可欠であると考え、作りました。キャドン電子、IHI エアロスペース、清水建設、日本政策投資銀行の4社で共同設立したこのスペースワンは、この4社のそれぞれの強みを生かして、これまでにないシンプルな運用ができる機体とその専用車上の開発を行いました。この我々の発射場であるスペースポートキーは、ここの大阪の隣の和歌山県にあります。紀伊半島の南端である串本町と那智勝浦町に位置しています。周辺には日本有数の古く美しい山々に囲まれていまして、南側と東側が海に面しているロケットの打ち上げには非常に適した場所になっています。またここへのアクセスは東京からですと飛行機と陸路で約2時間半で着くことができます。ここに示した写真はこのスペースポートキーの周辺で撮影されたものです。和歌山県は古道、神社、自然が残る歴史豊かな地域になっています。ここに我々のロケット発射場を作るにあたって、地元の協力がどこまで得られるかというところが最初は心配したんですけれども、それは杞憂でした。自治体である和歌山県、串本町、那智勝浦町のみならず、地元の企業や住民の皆さんが建設時の土地の収用の段階から全面的に協力をしていただきました。 我々は単にこの地域で事業を行うだけではなくて、地域社会の一員になるという明確なコミットメントを持って今事業に臨んでいます。そして、昨年のこの2回の打ち上げを得て、今では、地域への波及効果というものを数字として目の当たりにできています。税収の増加、雇用の創出、地元企業の活性化に加えて観光客も増えています。ロケット打ち上げ当日には人口約1万4000人のこの町に1万人近くの見学者が訪れています。高齢化、過疎化、経済衰退などこの地域が抱える課題も理解しています。我々の活動はこれらの問題に長期的に前向きな変化をもたらすことを望んでいます。例えば地元の高校では、宇宙専門のコースが新設されておりまして、スペースポートキーからも、この、講師として、応援をしているところです。最後に皆様にスペースワンが大切にしているポリシーをお伝えしたいと思います。スペースワンは設立から初号機打ち上げまでわずか6年という国際的に見てもかなり短期間で達成しました。CEO の豊田の言葉を借りれば、スペースワンとして失敗という言葉は使いません。すべてが将来の挑戦に向けた準備なのです。この言葉は我々の企業文化であり、これからもスピード感を持って、挑戦を続けていきたいと考えています。グラッチェ。
Excellent. Thank you very much. We're getting close to the end on time, but I would like to ask just one quick question to everyone, please. For Giovanni to start, very, very briefly, each country has its own rules to ensure that space launches protect the public safety. Do you have any thoughts on how we can encourage government regulators to work towards common standards and requirements?
Thank you, George. And first of all, let me say that reaching full harmonization in the space regulatory sector is difficult because we don't have any uniform regulation at international level. And because safety pertains some sensitive issues like risk assessment, risk acceptance, and sovereignty of state and public perception, it is difficult to reach an agreement, especially also in this political context, you know. But there is one thing we can do is try to federate authorities to agree on good practices that may be endorsed on a voluntary basis by the regulator, especially, for example, in point like ground risk assessment and infrastructure, facilities and services and airspace access. So I think that there is a lot of work to do even in developing consensus standard on these topics.
Very good. And then for the spaceport members of the panel, let me ask just for a quick one or two examples. Are there any activities other than launching rockets that you think might make sense to carry out at your spaceport? For example, manufacturing, testing, research, education and training, workforce development, or point-to-point. One or two of those just to continue the discussion. Scott McLaughlin, how would you respond to that? Scott, are you still on?
Mm-hmm. Do you hear me?
Yes,
hello,
go ahead.
Hello? Yeah. I mean, we're, upwards of right about an hour away from, the biggest city. So we're not an urban spaceport, but we're trying to do a little bit of everything. In fact, we've turned into a little bit of a civilian test range. So we've got other things like parachute drops. We're looking at electric vehicles, air mobility. And I think that's part of what it takes, for a spaceport is to be able to diversify unless you've got a key customer or a key market that you can service regularly.
Excellent. Yoshinori, how would you respond? Any things other than launch that you think might make sense?
At this moment, we have the collecting the manufacturers companies in the Hokkaido area. Because of the Hokkaido area is, as I explained, mainly businesses of agriculture. So the manufacturing business is kind of the important import from the mainland of Japan, such like Aichi area or Osaka area and the Tokyo area. So we are now working together with those areas people to the coming up to the Hokkaido area to work together, develop the space-related business in the up north area.
Very good. Patrizio, how would you respond for Grottaglie?
Yes, I said always that Grottaglie is firstly an airport and then a spaceport. And now in Grottaglie there are more operations for cargo spare parts or production parts of Leonardo, but also a new startup operation for goods with Turkish Airlines, with a feed operation in Istanbul. But in Grottaglie we have the presence of more industries of production, test, experiments. We have the presence of the technological aerospace district of Apulia. We are at the presence of polytechnic on universities. And then we hope that, and we think that the cooperation, the collaboration, and will bring us more results, more targets for our economic development.
Very good, thank you. And Shigeru, how would you respond? Is there something other than launch that you think would make sense at Spaceport Key?
はい、先ほども紹介したように、我々スペースポートキーノというのは、地元から非常に愛されている企業です。今後もこのローカルエコノミーとして、挑んでいくんですけれども、特に教育に重きを置いています。先ほども言ったように、地元の串本の小座高校には宇宙探求コースというものが開設されていまして、そこにスペースワンの職員は特別コースとして協力もしています。また民間の車上なので、かなり非公開の部分もあったんですけれども、地元の小学生、中学生、高校生を対象に一般公開を行ったりですね、町営の博物館が今できているんですけれども、そこへの展示物の寄贈ということも行っております。
Excellent, thank you very much. So I think that is getting close to the end of our time period today. I'm sure there are many other questions. Feel free to reach out to us and we've tried to get you some responses. Let me try to sum up just a little bit what we've talked about today. Some key points. The global space economy is very large and is growing larger every day. And spaceports can contribute to that growth and also benefit from it. An important insight to allow that to happen is that spaceports are not just places to conduct launches, but they can be the focal points in the technology hubs, things that we've just been talking about. Some of the ways that I think can help to ensure our success include partnerships between government, industry, academia, and the international community. And that's especially true between countries that share aspirations and values like Italy, Japan, and the United States. Another important factor would be the use of advanced technologies and new ways of doing business. We need to be open to that. And then finally, collaboration and communication, such as through events like this, and through participation in other organizations, such as the Global Spaceport Alliance. So I hope you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have and found it informative. As we wrap up, I want to first of all thank the people of Japan for hosting this year's expo, the Apulia region for organizing this session, all of our individual speakers and panel members, and members of our audience for their attention and interest in this very important topic. I want to give a special shout out to all those who worked on preparing for and organizing this event, especially to Teresa Malloy and the many others who have done such hard work in having this very successful event. Thank you all. Let's join in thanking all of our participants, please. Sure.